Chapter 10 Inside the Puzzle. Calder felt restless as he stood in front of the living room window on Wednesday afternoon. It had been 2 days since their trip to the library. Not knowing what to investigate, neither Calder nor Petra had done any further research. Outside, it was pouring rain. The water was running and puddling. As Calder absent-mindedly watched the droplets forming and reforming in shape after shape, an idea came to mind. Of course! It was the obvious next step. He bounded up the stairs, away from his parents talking in the kitchen, and picked up the phone. When Petra answered, he said, "Listen, I think we should call the National Gallery and ask if a lady writing is there. To find out if the painting is safe and all that." "Why wouldn't it be?" "Well, I just want to be sure. Maybe Charles Fort's warping my brain, but stories about teleportation and people vanishing into thin air, we should check. I'll be right over." Here's a picture, Calder outside, or picture of Calder inside with it raining outside. Looking outside the window. See if there might be any extra things to look for. Neither Petra nor Calder had ever called a museum before. They flipped a penny about who was going to speak, and Petra dialed. There was a recording with museum hours and information about shows and tours, and then finally a chance to talk to an operator. Petra held the phone at an angle so that Calder could hear too. "National Gallery of Art." The voice was silky, not young, and very official. We're calling to find out if a certain Vermeer painting is on the wall right now." "Oh, what picture are you looking for?" Petra made a face at Calder. The voice now had that half-fake cheeriness that some adults get when talking to kids. Petra continued, trying to sound as businesslike as possible. "A lady writing?" "Let me check my computer. If the painting is on loan, I can tell you." Petra and Calder waited, silent, for her to come out again. "Well, yes, the painting is traveling just now. It's in Chicago. There's going to be a show called Writers in Art at the Art Institute." Petra's and Calder's eyes widened. Calder grabbed the phone, pulling Petra's hair in the process. There was a fierce whispered "Ow!" followed by a muffled "Sorry." "Excuse me?" The woman's voice came on again. "Do you know whether the painting is in Chicago now?" Calder was squeezing the phone receiver so hard that his knuckles stood out. The woman on the other end hesitated. "Well, that's what the computer said. I assume so. It left Washington several days ago, and the show opens next week." Sensing that the woman was going to ask them what they were doing or whom she was speaking with, Calder said a quick "Thank you, goodbye," and hung up. "Holy smokes, Petra!" Petra nodded, silent. "Are you thinking the same thing I am?" She nodded again. "I'm calling the Art Institute, and this time, Calder Pillay, you're not grabbing the phone and ripping out my hair." After a great deal of waiting and transferring to other lines, the second call told them only that a new show was going up the following week. "Well, it could just be that we're thinking about this stuff because the painting is part of a show here, and we're just picking it up, that's all." Petra's voice trailed off. "Yeah, but I still feel funny knowing she's traveling, don't you?" Calder said. "Paintings travel all the time, and now we'll actually be able to see her." Time for a blue one. They sat cross-legged on the floor with the geographer between them, arguing about whether the M&Ms they'd picked were the same size. They played a half-hearted game of Monopoly. Calder's mom brought them cookies on dark blue napkins covered with green frogs. "Hey, where did these napkins come from, Mom?" "I don't remember. They're fun, aren't they?" After she left the room, Calder and Petra looked at each other. "Maybe the rain gave the frogs an excuse to drop in," Calder grinned. "Right. Speaking of frogs, any news from New York?" Calder had called Tommy the night before. He told Calder he was beginning to wonder if there was a reason that everyone in his neighborhood was so unfriendly, like there was some huge secret he hadn't figured out. Frog was definitely not around, and no one wanted to tell Tommy why. He admitted to Calder that he might have been a bit dramatic with the kidnapping stuff, but facts were facts. Frog was there one day and gone the next, and no one was talking. I feel bad not being able to help, Calder said to Petra. Must be creepy, wondering if you'll be the next kid to go. Maybe your pentominos will say something, she suggested. Calder stirred them around. He pulled out an N. He frowned. N. For what? Calder thought aloud. New York? No. National Gallery? Forget it. A serious case of Vermeer on the brain. Yeah, it's hard to think about anything else. After school the next day, Petra raked leaves with her dad, who seemed to be in his own world lately. He never passed the food at meals. He had forgotten to turn off the bathtub a couple of days ago. He tried to put on tiny socks from the socks basket and just looked puzzled when they didn't fit. Now he raked over and over the same spot on the lawn. The grass was pulling up, leaving patches of bare dirt. Dad? Petra had stopped working. Yes? You okay? Petra's dad looked at her as if she were on the other side of a closed window. He lifted his hand in a stiff wave. Fine. But Petra didn't believe him. What had happened to him? He still went off to work, but he was always distracted. She wished with all her heart she had found the letter that had started this, the one her parents had been arguing about weeks ago. There might have been something she could have done. As her dad headed inside, she heard him mutter, alone, insane. Petra's eyes opened wide. Alone? The first thing she thought of was a lady writing. What was her dad talking about? Had he meant money? Or had she heard wrong? Maybe he'd said alone. Well, either way, it sounded bad. Calder made 2 pumpkin pies that afternoon with his mom and played 3 games of solitaire. He helped his dad fold the laundry. Calder, I need you for something else. Come outside. Calder's dad was already in his jacket. Calder followed him into the front walk, noticing with interest all the papers that had collected under the dead plants in their yard. He was remembering the letter about crime and art that Petra had found there and then lost. His dad was squinting up at the outside of the house. It's time we repainted. Think we should keep the same color? Yup, Calder said. That's Grandma Ranjana's color, isn't it? Too bad she can't know we're keeping her choice. Why did she like red so much, anyway? Calder's dad laughed. It's a long story. Something about the artist Vermeer. She wished he'd used more red because she thought he was the best, but red would have made him perfect. Weird, Calder said quietly. He glanced down the block and saw Petra in her yard. She had on a red hat, a smudge of bright color against the November gray. Sometimes he wished he'd never heard of Fort or Vermeer. Events that were purely accidental were beginning to feel like they fit together, but not in a way he understood or even knew how to think about. It was one thing if you were using a handful of plastic pieces to find solutions to a puzzle. It was another if you felt like you'd fallen inside a puzzle and couldn't get out.